Hey there, thanks for clicking on this video. Before we get started with the next Backyard Barbecue podcast, I think an explanation is in order. You see, the next 3 Backyard Barbecue podcasts are going to be all about something that is near and dear to my heart and to the hearts of the guests that I'm interviewing for these next 3 podcasts, and that is something called the Salt DVD. And to explain what that is, I came here to the office at Camp Phillip. And this is where the magic happens. This room you're looking at is called the photography office, and it's not much right now because it's not the summer, but this room gets filled up with some twinkle lights, a whole lot of footage, and a whole lot of late nights, good times, laughs, and editing. Because in this room is where the Salt DVD is made. The Salt DVD is a video made to encapsulate the whole of the summer here at Camp Phillip. And it sounds like a fun job, and it really is, but it can also be pretty stressful, and there's no real blueprint for you. See, everybody has a different, unique summer, and it's our job to capture that summer in the best way possible. This Salt DVD has become a really interesting art form, and if I didn't think so, I wouldn't make 3 podcasts about it. It is worth being analyzed and talked about, and I hope that even if you've never heard of Camp Phillip before, or you don't know what the Salt DVD is, they're able to glean some wisdom from these podcasts about the creative process, because I've always been, I've had the opinion that documentary editing is one of the most intense and all-encompassing art forms, where you need to make the story out of footage that is just raw footage. There's no story there, you have to create yourself. And little by little over the past few years, the Salt DVD has become more of that documentary style with these beautiful montages and different ways of telling the story of the summer. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the Backyard Barbecue podcast. I hope you glean some creative wisdom from this episode with Devon Strommen. Devin is the CEO of photography titan Devon Rose Photography. You can find her work on Instagram as well as her website, devonrosephotography.com. Devin, welcome to the Backyard Barbecue podcast.
Hi, Elliot. Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited, super nervous. I've never been on a podcast before, but I'm pretty excited. Just us talking a little bit ahead of time about kind of your vision for what we're going to talk about. It's something that I'm pretty passionate about, so I'm really excited to kind of dive in.
That's amazing. I'm so excited that this is your first podcast too. And I'm excited to talk to you because everyone who worked at camp this summer knows how endlessly I would talk about the Salt DVD, and now I can talk about it with someone who understands it. So, then why don't you start by talking about your origins at Camp Phillip and why you ended up there in the first place?
I have been going to camp my whole life. I say going because even though I still don't work there, it's a huge part of my life still, but going all the way back, I have been going since I was a peewee, which is the youngest age of camper that you can be. So I believe you can start that when you're 5 years old. And even before that, I just camped in the campground with my parents when my older sister was able to be a camper. And so basically every single summer of my entire life, I have gone to camp to some degree. So I was a camper, and then once I was in high school, I started the junior staff process, and then of course once I was out of high school, I worked on Salt staff for 5 years, 5 wonderful years. I wish I could have done more, and then last fall I actually got married there also, because that's how special it was to me. That's where I met Greg, my husband, and so and we still go back there all the time. It's where our friends choose to hang out, where it's where I've made most of my friends, and so to this day, and hopefully in the future, it will continue to be that special place for us. Even if we're far from having worked there, it still is super, super special.
Agreed. I just remember this time last year, that was a big highlight of the fall.
Yeah.
I mean, that was just an incredible.
Thank you.
It just went off without a hitch. It was wonderful.
It was pretty special. It was we didn't know then, but it was one of the last big hurrahs of lots of our favorite people getting to be together before this unfortunate pandemic hit. But so that kind of carried us through the tough season of being but remember those good times when we all got to be together and it didn't have to be limited amounts of people. And we had no idea then how special it was to be able to be all together. You kind of take it for granted until you don't have it anymore. So yeah, yes. That was really special.
So when I I last year had this moment where I like all of a sudden decided I love counseling, but it's game over. Like I'm not going back to that. Did you have a moment like that, or like was it always your plan? What made you want to be a photographer at Camp Phillip?
So I always saw myself eventually getting to that role. I mean, if it was up to me, honestly, I would have done it from year one, but that's not how it works. But I wouldn't. There was kind of a pivotal point, but also not. So even when I got hired on right away, I was probably one of the few people who didn't counsel every single week their first summer. I think I counseled maybe 3 times, which is pretty rare for a first year. I just did a lot of other things. I did Pee Wee camp. I think I did every Pee Wee camp that year, and then I did some programs, and then I think I might have helped be the photographer 1 week or something if somebody was missing. But already from the get-go, I kind of just had a unique situation of like Matthew saw my strengths lying elsewhere and not really in counseling. And then same with second year, it was even less. I just did a lot more program stuff, GPGC camp. He kind of just placed me wherever I was willing to go. And then my third summer, I applied to be a photographer, and I had gotten it, and then we got news that Erica Vandenbush wanted to come back, and this was after I had gotten the position, and so I was going to be a photographer with Alex Vanasavith, and then Matthew called me and was like, hey, Erica's coming back, and she would like to be the photographer. Are you okay holding off for 1 more year? And I was like devastated, but at the same time I was like, how do you say no? Like, I understand the like joy that role probably brings, and like I couldn't imagine wanting to come back and someone else being like, no, sorry, I know you love it, but I'm gonna take it. And so I was like, I get to be at camp no matter what, so like all in good time, like my time will come. And so then I just spent another summer doing programs, and then finally my 4th year on staff was my first year as photographer. So I'd been waiting for my chance.
Wow.
And then I was photographer for 2 more summers. So my first one was with Erica, and then my second one was with Jerry, which were both wonderful.
That blows my mind. I did not know that.
Yeah, not many
And
people
that
know
is
that.
hard. That's hard.
Yeah.
We had a moment, like, 'cause you know that Jerry worked at camp this whole summer.
Yes.
So I'm just imagining if he would have come back and said, by the way, I'm taking my old job back.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, you could
that's
like
tricky.
It had only been a couple of days, honestly, I think maybe a week, and so like it's not like I had months leading up to it and it was like you show up and you get it taken from you, but still even a couple days, like you start thinking about it, you're like super excited, even just like creatively planning in your head like this is where I want to take things, and then you're like, okay, we're just gonna put that on pause.
Yeah.
So it was definitely trying. It was a hard decision, but also not a hard decision. Like I knew I would have my opportunity eventually, and again, Erica, she's one of my best friends now, and I knew how much the position meant to her, and so why would you deny anybody the opportunity to be at camp? Like, I could never do that.
Yeah, still very, very tricky thing to do. So you mentioned you had already creative ideas of what you wanted to do. What were those creative ideas that you were thinking, man, if I'm a photographer someday, when I'm a photographer, this is what I'll do?
Yeah, I didn't have like huge ideas, but I sort of like backpedaling, I guess, a little bit to an off-topic thing, but my sophomore year of college, my family moved out of my childhood home, and at that point, I mean, that was really hard for me, but it was at that point where I was like, I want to come up with a way to like remember this home, like, and commemorate it and give it all the love that it deserves, and like represent what it meant to me growing up. And so that was the first time I had ever like jumped into like videography, I guess. I'd already loved photography. I've loved it since I was little. But so at that point, this was a year or 2 before I would actually become a photographer. But at this point, I was like starting to put together small montages of videos for my home to start. But then after that, it kind of carried into just like life events. I now make a video every year that I commemorate back on the whole year. I record all things, and I just kind of make my own mini salt DVD. But when it came time for me to be photographer, I was like, I want to take, yes, it's emotional already, but I wanted to take it further. I was like, I felt like the DVDs were missing something when I started. And I didn't realize it. Other people didn't realize it. Like, they loved them all the same. But I felt like it could be taken an extra step further. And so I really wanted to kind of bump up the video aspect of things and take that further, because I think it has a greater impact than photos a lot of times. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm a photographer, so I back my own like art, but I've grown to appreciate videography even more, because that has the ability to like actually take you back to a moment, where a photo is just like, oh, I remember it, but I feel like with video, you're like actually reliving it. You get to watch it over and over again. And so I don't know, like, I don't think we ever had a conversation about it, but when I became videographer with Erica, we both are very emotional people, emotion driven. And so somehow we were on the same page. I really don't remember ever having a conversation about it, but we took the DVD and kind of just pivoted with it. Like, we took it from just photos and we made it way more into this documentary style thing, and wanted to evoke way more emotion than in years past. And so I guess that was my idea. I didn't really have a ton. And I also can't take full credit for it. So it's not my idea, but that was something that I had already thought about going into the summer. Like, this is a direction I want to take the DVD, because I think it just is more impactful.
So you're saying before your first summer as photographer, like the end of your third summer,
Yeah.
you watched this all DVD, that is mostly photos or all photos?
I would say, okay, my first 2 summers were, I would say, 95% photos. The first year, I honestly think might be 100% photos. And then the year before I became photographer, video had started being implemented. I think it was the first year that camp got a GoPro, rest in peace. I don't even know what that thing is. And I think it was the first time camp had really invested in a camera that was good for camp. And so like we had started putting in some videos, but it was not, I felt like there was no purpose behind what people were recording necessarily. Like this, I'm not trying to knock anybody's art, like, but I think that they were just videos that happened to have been taken. And then the summer I became photographer, what I would say maybe 50-50 split between video and photo. But if anything, I think video was even more than that. It just took a huge pivot that year.
I gotta say, I agree with you with the emotion that video can draw. Like I want to talk about when like your first creative things that you did as a child, because when I think about my child, like when I think about being a photographer, it really didn't happen until this year. This past spring, I decided really close to when you have to apply for SALT. Oh, wait a minute, I'm going to be a photographer, and then it was just it. But before that, I really didn't think about it. But looking back in my childhood, like getting little digital cameras and making stop motion videos, and I got a little waterproof camera, and I just loved using Windows Movie Maker, rest in peace, and that stuff really inspired me, and I'm getting so, like, it's just such a big part of who I am.
Mm-hmm.
Can you see that in your childhood, growing up, things that, you mentioned the thing about the house. I mean, I think that's massive. That's an intrinsic desire. Like, I gotta make something to capture this.
I mean, I have loved photography since I was pretty little. I can vividly remember my first camera was a film camera that was purple and had a yellow wrist strap. And then my first digital camera we bought from a relative's rummage sale. And honestly, the screen was maybe 1 inch by 1 inch. Like, it was a brick, but I was ecstatic when we bought it. Like, I was so thrilled. But I think I've spoken to this before. Like, on a post somewhere, but I think where I grew up and just, we lived on an old farm and it was just, in my opinion, it was beautiful. There are fields everywhere, and I always wanted to capture that. I just loved, my bedroom went out onto the roof of our house and I would spend so many nights out there just like, because it was such a beautiful view, and I would take pictures from the roof, or I would go out into the fields and I would take pictures through the corn or the wheat, or like, they weren't even good photos, but like everything, like my reflection in a puddle, and like just, I would always constantly be on this like, I don't even know the right way to describe it, but like I was constantly, my mind was being distracted by every little thing that was like beautiful. Maybe some people call it ADD, but like I just constantly was viewing the world around me as like artistic opportunities. And I still do that. Like I get so distracted by like how beautiful things are. And so I started taking photos from a very young age. I think when I was in like 5th grade, I had a relative reach out and say like, hey, your photos are really good. You should enter it into this like photography art show. And I did that, and I got a couple like awards. They weren't really that good of photos, but I don't know that there's necessarily like a pivotal point or moment. It was just kind of this gradual growth of my passion over the years. And then in college, I started like actually photographing people and not just nature. I mean, my dream growing up was to be a Nat Geo photographer.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah. Still, I think that'd be pretty cool. But I started photographing more people, mostly just seniors and families, people I knew. And then people had asked me like, do you foresee yourself being a wedding photographer? And I would say no over and over, like, absolutely not. That is the last thing I want to do. I don't know what the reason was. I think even like 5 years ago, photography was so much different when it came to weddings. It used to be so much more just like posed portraits. You're in front of church. That's it. And it has moved so much more into an emotion-based art and storytelling, and just there's way more to it now than just, okay, stand, smile, we're good to go. And I really like that part of it. So I don't even know that I saw a shift happening, or if I just decided like, you know what, I'm going to make it my own. It doesn't have to be like that. I don't know exactly what changed my mind. I mean, someone reached out to me. I booked like 2 weddings one summer, and I was like, okay, I'll do it. And then it was my plan to be returning to camp, and my parents told me that financially it was not the best decision to be working at camp. Like, I needed to make more money, and I understand, like, they had my best interest in mind. I totally understand, but that was not going to happen. And so they told me I needed to find another job. And so basically I decided at that point, like, the only job that's going to allow me to work at camp would be this photography thing. And so I got serious about it, and I decided like, this is my way to be at camp. And so I went from booking 2 weddings one summer, and then the next summer I had 10. I just like took the jump. I was like, let's do it. And so a lot of weekends I did have to spend away from camp, unfortunately, but it did allow me to be there when it mattered during the week. And so I spent my last 3 summers at camp also being a fairly full-time photographer. But it allowed me to be there, which is really all that matters.
So you're saying you were working as a photographer while you weren't a photographer at camp that one summer? Oh,
Yes.
That's such a flex. I love
Look at me
that.
go. I did it because I had to. Like, if it was up to
Yeah.
me, I would not have done both. It would have just been camp. Because I would not wish that exhaustion upon anyone. I mean, a lot of times I would try to book like double header weekends so that it was just like, I'm gone extra long this weekend and get it over with, but then I can have another week or like weekend at camp that I don't have to leave. And so I tried to like smush them all in where I could. But I was pretty careful to make sure that there was at least some balance, because I know even though weekends are just for hanging out, it's it is critical for building relationships with people that you work with. And if you miss out on those moments, it can be pretty sad. And the weekends are also when fun, beautiful things happen that can be put into the SALT DVD, and you don't want to be missing out on those content opportunities or feeling left out, like that you missed a critical part of the summer. Nobody likes to feel that way. So I tried to make a conscious effort to be at camp as much as I could when I could.
That's really interesting to hear that, because I wouldn't have thought that was a have to.
Yes.
But I'm sure you can see that, like, maybe those weddings that you didn't maybe want to book all those weddings, but they probably enhance a lot of the stuff you're doing at camp in the long run, or maybe the stuff that you're able to do in your career.
Right.
But that is difficult. I'm starting to do wedding video, and that's something I don't know if I'm gonna be able to make that decision to like book a whole bunch of weddings during the summer.
Right.
At least not right away.
And with video, it's like it does require like creativity on the day, but I found, because I've done a couple of wedding videos, but on the day of, you can just kind of shoot like crazy, but it requires way more time afterwards. When, in my opinion, photography after the wedding is over, it's way easier to edit quickly. You can apply presets and settings to things in large batches, and it just goes fast. And it doesn't, like, it requires creativity, but it's a little more mindless than video, where it requires all your attention and just like trying to come up with cool things. So like, weddings just took my time mostly on the weekends and then a few hours during the week, but video I think takes a lot more time after the wedding, for sure.
Agreed. I'm anticipating that. I think for now I'm keeping it to people I know and love.
There you go.
And because then you know, but I love video editing, and I agree with that. It's such a long process. And just a friend I was just talking to this week, who's doing video for the track team here at Gustavus, was asking about video editing, and she was like talking about how long it's going to take in this kind of way of, isn't it going to take like 3 hours? I don't know if I have time for that. And I said, if you feel that way about it, you shouldn't do it, because if I'm sitting down in front of a screen to edit video for 4 hours and I have a good cup of coffee, man, that's the time of my life. I love it. But that's how you have to feel about it. And when you talk about your the way you did photography as a kid, it's just obvious to me that like you just have a very much more refined sense of beauty than the average person would, because of how much you gravitate towards as a child. Like, I think that plenty of people don't look for beauty in everything at that age, but especially the nature photography thing, that really sticks out to me, because that's something that I think that we did, if anything like dropped off this summer for as far as photography, it's just like the nature photography that you did, and also Esther did a bit of it last summer, just goes by the wayside, because of my it's so not natural to me to want to do nature stuff. But
well, I can teach you.
Okay.
I don't know, you just see, I don't know, I could photograph nature all the time, and then I look at them, I'm like, I have way too many pictures of leaves. I don't know why I took them, but they're beautiful. I'll never do anything with them, but story of my life.
That's great. That's so great. I just get amazed and obsessed by, in the summer, how you take this video, and in the moment it doesn't seem like much, but every single time you look back at it in a week, and then a month, and 2 months, and it just becomes like this vivid, cool memory. Like, it's just amazing. I love documenting.
Yeah, when I was thinking about this interview ahead of time, I was thinking back to my first summer with Erica, when we were photographers, and like we would get up extra early to go like get videos of sunrises or just sunsets, or like we were constantly looking to capture extra moments. And like, sure, in the moment it might have felt like a mundane Wednesday average sunrise, whatever, but then at the end of the summer it's like, wait, no, that was actually special. And like once you leave, it's like, I actually appreciated having a video of the sunrise coming up over the waterfront. Like, you don't realize you miss it until you're gone, and then you're sad if you don't have something to look back on. And so even if it felt like a silly thing to record, we just would record whatever it was. Like, you can never have too many things documented, in my opinion. Like, it's just more the merrier.
And I think a big X factor this summer was the ability to use a much better computer. We got the new iMac because this is a nerdy thing for me, but Jerry got excited about it. I think you'll get excited about it. We made the entire Salt DVD in one session in the video software, and everything was organized into bins by day. So like, even when I'm making the camper DVD, so I would edit all the video for it, and like I would do everything in the video editing software I would be doing, and I would actually take stuff for the Salt DVD before I took stuff for the camper DVD.
Oh, definitely.
And just like everything would be just nicely organized, and then you can just shoot like crazy during the day, and then as long as you organize it well.
Oh,
I just think that's massive.
I wish we had organization when I was there, or good software. I was so happy when I found out they were getting a new computer because it was long overdue, and the amount of late nights, especially the summer with Jeremiah, we were up so late. Like, it was just crazy how many hours of sleep we lost, but also at the same time I had weddings that I needed to edit, so like we just sit there while things are rendering and I'm just working away at my other job, so like it worked. But like countless times we were up to like 3 a.m. praying the computer wouldn't crash.
Somebody told me, like, talking about my relationship with Lauren, that it was almost like we were roommates this summer, and I was like, it's more intense than that. Like,
you don't even understand.
With a roommate, you're just with that person. Because what we did is, a lot of times, because we came into the office with nothing but a vague idea of what photography looked like in the past, and then had to just start. So like all the file structuring and the way we did things was kind of developed in the first week and a half, and then there. So we were really proud of it. But a lot of times we get the comment of, man, your job's going to be so much easier now. You can sleep at better times.
Yeah.
And I'm sure we did in general, but we basically took all of that time and then tossed it back into the Salt DVD.
Right.
The as far as like the video picture thing, I don't know. I know I sent the link to you of the Salt DVD, but if you get a chance to watch, you'll notice that there are about maybe 30 some photos in the first half, and then there's one segment at the end that has photos, and that is it.
Yeah, it just...
The entire thing is video. So as far as how time intensive it is to make an hour and 31 minutes, or not an hour, 131 minutes, so 2 hours and 11 minutes of video content, it is an absolute joy, and it takes a long time.
It does, but like I've never felt like I was never sick of working on it. Like that was like, I love, don't get me wrong, I love the campers, but like I always like wanted to be working on the Salt DVD, and so working on the camper DVD was like, I don't want to do this right now. Like, please, I've got this project over here that I'm like dying to work on. Like, I could have worked on it for hours and hours and hours. Like, it never got tiring to me unless I was physically tired, but like mentally I was like, I could never be sick of this. Like, I just enjoy it so much.
And I cannot tell you how much I empathize with that right now. Like, I'm totally there with you. And for me, it was a huge, I think it changed my life. Like, I'll look back and see that this changed my life because I'm seeing, wait a minute, I can like something so much that I never get tired of working on it. Like, I didn't realize, I felt like I learned how to work hard in high school, working, 20, 30 hours a week and doing school, and like, okay, this is working hard. But you don't realize, if you find something that you like enough, oh shoot, I can put in like, I can get up at 6 to edit before breakfast and be editing until 1 in the morning, and it doesn't affect me at all.
At all.
Whoa.
Could lose so much sleep over that DVD, and I wouldn't even care.
Describe the feeling the first time, or not, maybe not the first time, your favorite experience of sitting down to show everybody the Salt DVD.
Oh my gosh, I literally have notes written down about like
it's so
the
exciting.
first time. I mean, both summers, like it doesn't, both of them I felt it the exact same way, but like I have never experienced such a greater thrill than the first time we showed them the Salt DVD that I had worked on. Like, it just, I can't really explain it. Like, they're all emotional for the same reasons I am, but then I have this extra, like, heightened emotion. Like, that was my baby all summer long, and I'm sharing it with the world now. And, like, especially the summer that I worked with Erica, because that was the first one that I was being a photographer. I had mentioned that it seemed like a pivotal point kind of in what the Salt DVD was. And so before this, people had just really experienced photos, but I can vividly remember watching people's faces like light up when they watched this DVD. Like, I watched the DVD with them, but most of the time I was watching other people because it was just watching, I get emotional thinking about it right now. Just watching them, people didn't really realize how much video was going to be in it. We didn't really talk about it. It's always top secret, but when we incorporated so much video, it was so cool to watch people be transported back to these moments that a lot of them thought were gone. And so I think that was just super special. Like, I loved both DVDs I work on, but I have this very, very fond memory of the first one and the first time people watched that, because it was so different than anything they had seen that I had worked on. And even to this day, I still watch my Salt DVDs all the time. Our friends will get together and we'll watch them. But we always have conversations about them, and people will be like, which one's your favorite? And I love them both for different reasons, but I think the first one I made was my favorite. And even other people I've talked with Eli before about it, and he's been like, it's really hard for me, but a lot of times I think I would like the one you and Erica made the most because no one had ever done anything like that yet. Like, it was so brand new, and so it does stick with other people just as vividly as it does for me. And I think knowing that other people feel that way without even having had that conversation with them, like knowing, hey, that was so, like, that was out of this world, that was new, and I experienced like a fond memory with that as well, is pretty special. Like, I remember being excited just when I wasn't making them and being like, I can't wait to see the Salt DVD, but it's such a different energy after you've put in the hours on it. I'm sure you can relate to that for sure.
Oh yeah.
And you've only
amazing.
done it. Yeah.
Yeah, I've only done it once. I have 3 more, so
That's awesome.
It's amazing. It's a big blessing for sure. It's crazy though, like, because there's that separation of like the hard cut where like there's no overlap between who's working on it, that our experiences are so much the same. Like, I can understand what you're talking about. It's funny, I don't, it's not a bad thing at all, but it's just interesting because I think that you and I haven't talked to Esther much about it, and Jerry and myself would probably all say like the same thing of, it was like this, but when I started working on Salt DVD, then it became this. Because what you're saying about like, it had never been like this before, that's how I felt all summer. Like, man, it's just this completely different beast.
And that's the beauty. I think every year someone brings something new to the table. Like, I saw this change. Like, again, there is nothing against past photographers at camp, but I saw it go from this role of like, well, anyone can kind of press a button on a camera and like it's just a role we kind of need to fill, to a role that people wanted to fill. I think it drastically changed. Like, people had this desire to be the photographer, and it also has turned into like, we don't just let anybody fill it. Again, it used to be more of a like, well, if you could take a picture, like, sure. But now I think there's really careful consideration about who is going to be the 2 photographers, because it is so important now who is going to be documenting the summer. And so I think every year somebody brings something new to the table. So once I was done working with Erica and then I work with Jeremiah, they are 2 very different people. Completely different, and Jeremiah and I are very different, but it was so cool to see what he brought to the table. Like, he brought this spunk and this energy, and I was more of the sentimental side, and that was such a cool blend and balance. for the Salt DVD, and I'm sure you and Lauren are very different too. And so every single year, I would think like, wow, I can't wait to see what they create. And so when you guys started, I was like, this is going to be so fun for them. Like, I remember thinking about how you guys had to go in blindly, like not having that overlap year. But I remember saying to somebody like, but I'm not even worried. Like, those are the two people I would have chosen and they're going to do a great job. Like, I have no doubts. Which is cool to like, I feel like the photographer role like feels like my baby also, like the Salt DVD. And so I remember feeling this like, I'm so happy like those are the people, like I couldn't have handpicked better people myself. Yeah, but I'm sure everybody also, like you said, feels that, well, it changed when I did this. Which is okay, like you're allowed to feel that way.
The energy in the room is just insane. We used the new lodge this year.
Oh, I saw that. That's so nice.
I wanted to make the sound really like a lot better. I'm really picky about that. Like,
that's fair. It was never good in the past.
And even this year, I was like, it's not quite right. I mean, we can't do surround sound, but maybe we can. So we'll work on it. But that's just such a huge part of it too. Like I got really specific, and Lauren and I would be talking like very early on about what the songs would be, because the music is just such an important part to me about like, the feeling
it's
of it.
huge.
And then you kind of hear about people like taking the soundtrack and then listening to it and getting into those songs too.
Yeah, that's always so cool.
Meanwhile, I'll never listen to them again because I heard them way too many times that summer.
There's one song from one of our Salt DVDs that Greg didn't work on staff that year, but he was visiting me the week that we were finishing up the Salt DVD, and there was one segment that I was kind of behind on, and so of course when you're editing, you're like stopping, going back, and so if he hears this song, he's like, turn it off. I don't remember the name of the song, but anytime he hears it, he's like, I can't. He just has vivid memories of sitting in the office with me as I'm like playing it back a billion times, and I just like am so numb to it at that point. But he was like, it drove me nuts. But I mean, I could listen to the songs over and over. I'll cry every time, but it's fine.
Yeah, songs are so important. I think it's funny that he got sick of it because it's like he wasn't the one actually listening to it the most times.
No, but also when I found that like when creatively, like it's easy for us to probably watch past Salt DVDs because we're just viewing it different. But for a lot of people, like if they're not in them, they're like, I feel nothing. Like, what? I don't feel like watching this. And I totally get that. Like, that's pretty normal. But like, I could sit through other Salt DVDs and be okay. But he like hears this song and he's like, I have no attachment to it. I have no memory to it. And I'm like, but it's special to me.
Yeah. The biggest thing that I would say I latched onto with the Salt DVD is making it something that is just objectively beautiful and powerful. So that's a tough task. You really have to start diving into how you tell a story with video, and how motion affects emotion. And that was cool.
Yeah.
That was the first thing that Jerry said to me after we watched the Salt DVD was, like, the way the footage looks and moves makes you feel a certain way when it goes with the music. And
it does. And that was something that Jerry brought to the table too. I know, like, he's a musician, he's a drummer, and the segments that he would work on had such, like, with the beat, like, he was listening to the music and then editing according to that, and that I've learned so much from him, and I do it even more so after working with him. But I remember he had like an opening segment and it had like super fast beats in it, and he just like flashed clips like insanely fast. And when that segment ended, everyone was like, whoa. Like, I remember people, and that was just the opening, like the first segment of the whole thing, the intro, and it left people like floored, and it was just the start. And I remember being like, he's so good. Like, what? Wow. Like, I'm lucky to work alongside of him. And he just did things that I didn't even think to do. And so, yeah, the music part, he helped teach me how I feel to connect the video with the music more.
And it's that, that mixture of having that passion for a specific part of the video that nobody else might see. Like even you as a very, like at that point, you're an experienced creative person, maybe didn't think to do something like that. But being the person who's either taking the pictures or editing the video and just knowing, oh, this is going to make people feel this way. And if I try to explain it today, nobody will get it. I would say like if you're editing video or pictures on July 15th and someone walks into the office and you say, that one's for the Salt DVD, I'm going to put that one on the Salt DVD, they'll be like, well, you could, but it's just a video.
Right.
And you don't, I love that aspect of it. Or when you're putting a camera in someone's face and they're like, it's the weekend, I'm going on a canoe ride, I don't need a video of this.
Right.
Having that being okay, being a little obnoxious and
For the sake of
and crazy.
It. Yep.
Yeah. That's amazing. Do you think that you find when you do something creative in a broad scope, do you find that you get more what you expect out of it or more what you don't expect? When you go in making a Salt DVD, for example, do you feel like you get the end product that you're looking for, or that by the end of it it's something you didn't even imagine?
I feel like, I mean, personally, I think I usually go in with a pretty clear vision of where I want it to go, and it usually ends up where I want it. But I would say when you work with, since we were teams, you don't know what other people are going to do. So like the Salt DVD as a whole is not just my responsibility. So like it came out better than I anticipated because there were parts that I didn't have the best vision of how it should go. And then because of the people I worked with, they were able to bring those sections to life in a way that I never could. And so, I mean, generally speaking, and personally, I would say yes, I usually end up where I think I'm going to end up. Or I'll work at it until it's to that point, because I am quite a perfectionist, which is a good and a bad thing. But I don't know if that answered your question, but...
No, I agree. Okay, as a perfectionist...
Oh boy.
Where was that a detriment, working at camp?
Well, I think that goes back to the late nights, in a way. Being a perfectionist, you just, like, I've had to toss it to the side sometimes, and I've gotten a lot better at it, but when you have something that you're so passionate about, like the DVD, and I think I ran into it even more my second year, because my first year I felt like I was the one being trained, and so it was like, I don't actually necessarily have the vision, I'm not the one in charge, and so like it doesn't feel like it's my role to be a perfectionist about things. Like I just need to learn and like follow directions and like figure it out. But my second summers of photographer, I experienced this perfectionism way more, and it was fine because Jeremiah likes to make sure things are done well too, so it was never like we bumped heads like he's lazy and I'm not, and I'm like, hey, be cleaner on your cuts, or like we were never in that situation. But for my own personal segments, I mean, I was working on an entire segment a couple days leading up to us like presenting it. I was still working on one because I could not tell myself that like it was good enough, because in my head it wasn't. And now I look back and I'm like, it's fine. Like, why did you worry so much? So I mean, I guess it mostly came down to the Salt DVD, when it would just like cause me to lose sleep when it didn't need to. I'm trying to think if it affected the day-to-day really.
Besides thinking about it at all times of day. Like,
right.
Did that ever happen?
I mean, I guess maybe it would come up like I would be frustrated that like none of our campfire clips are good because now it's dark and we can't get any but that's out of my control. And so like that was always a struggle for me. Once it was the later part of the summer, it's like dark by, I don't even know what time campfire starts. And then it's like, we're going to get no good footage from this campfire unless the fire tender makes sure we have a raging fire, which then in turn melts the kid's face off. So like something has to give. So that was always frustrating, but also I feel like in the end we didn't even, I mean, in camper DVDs you try to include campfire stuff, but we did include it in the Salt DVD, but I, again, am more emotion driven, and so I was like, I could take or leave, like, campfire segments. Like, they're funny if you were there and you got it, but there was more that happened than those 30 minutes at night.
Yeah, no doubt.
But I have gotten better at just tossing my perfectionism to the side and being like, it is what it is. I do my best. That's all that matters.
Yeah, it almost seems smaller once. I think if you could go back to those nights, it would almost seem like even worse too. Like I took a little video of when we were 2 weeks out from it being done.
Uh-huh.
I remember I was very stressed about, or not very, very stressed, I don't get stressed, but really more just very focused on maybe have a lot of footage to get. And I was worried about, do we have enough footage to fill this? Like we're trying to fill it like all with like video footage, and I don't want to use any bad clips ever. I want to use like only powerful, good clips with things that I want to share with people. And I took a little video going through all the segments on my phone and like showing, all right, here's all the gaps we have here, and here's all the gaps we have there. And I went back and watched that and remember, like, once it's done and it's out, you feel like, oh, that wasn't that bad. That was easy. But
in the moment, it was terrible.
It was, yeah, terrible, and really, I kind of fluctuated back and forth between, this is the best thing that anybody's ever created, and it's going to be God's gift to the Salt staff. And wait a minute, didn't they do this last year? Or maybe this is supposed to be part of it, and what if people expect this and then don't get it? And
right. It's a blessing and a curse to have such a responsibility as trying to tell the story of 25 plus different people's summers. Like, it's a huge responsibility. Like, two people alone are solely responsible for making sure everyone watches this DVD, and when it's over they feel like, yes, that was my summer, and not like, oh, that was their summer and not mine. And that's big. And so like it gets to your brain where you're like, like this is a lot of pressure. Like, yes, it's a blessing, but it's also like, I don't want to let other people down. You don't want anyone to feel like this DVD meant nothing to me. I
think that you begin to realize too that the things that you work on that are that intense are the most important things.
Oh yeah.
You make. Like, if you're not feeling that way about it, like, you should probably start feeling more that way about it. Anything you're working on, like that. If you care about that much, that's when the greatness happens. So maybe you accept some of the anxieties that come with it too.
Right. And I don't think I've ever worked on anything as hard as the stuff I work on for camp. Even like now that I don't work there, like if Matthew would ask me to do anything, I'd be like, yeah, I'll do it in a heartbeat. I'll drive to camp and do it. I work tirelessly to do anything for camp. And I've yet to experience that feeling. And that's just what kind of comes with the nature of camp. Like, because it was already so special to me, like I was willing to do work for it. So like, I don't foresee it ever being possible to like build up another like profession or something to be like so meaningful to me, and then I get to work for them like that. I mean, if it was in my ideal world, I would be the full-time photographer at Camp Phillip all year round, but they don't need that. But like, there's no other place that I think I would work as hard for. Even personally, like my own work, I don't feel as passionate about it as I do if I'm doing it for camp. And that's okay. Like, I've come to accept that that's really okay.
It's interesting though, and it really changes your perspective, I think, when you have that experience at camp.
Oh yes. Definitely.
And I mean, I saw it when your video for Facebook, the you put together the 4-part songs over quarantine. When I saw that project, what your perspective now makes sense to me, because when I saw that project, I thought that would be a pain in the butt.
Oh, it was. I have 3 more that I have footage for 3 more different songs. Sorry, Matthew, if you listen to this, I'll get to them. But I was just sitting at home one day and I said to Greg, like, camp should do this. Like, they're doing all these other virtual songs. I was like, and I kind of miss working on things for camp. And so I'm just going to reach out to Matthew and ask him if I can do this. Like, he didn't even ask me. I was like, I'm kind of feeling this itch to make something for camp. And then I worked tirelessly on it until it was done. Yes, it was a pain in the butt. Was it perfect? No. There are definitely people's mouths who do not match up with the song Don't Look Closely. But yeah, it was crazy how much like stress or sleep I'm willing to lose for projects like that.
So how do you reconcile, because that's actually a big question I had written down here, is how do you take all the energy you have for the SALT DVD? I left summer and I was feeling exhausted, and that lasted for like a week, and then I had this intense desire, like, okay, now what will I make? Because I can't make nothing. And like I was going to bed feeling like I didn't record anything every day. I suck. Like, this is bad. And I had to find a way to make something happen. So like, what did you do with that when you left?
It took me, I don't know if I made it right away. I mean, I would take videos of just everyday life, but I was definitely feeling that like post-camp gloom hanging over me. I still do, but like honestly for the first year after I like fully left camp, and now I didn't have like another summer to look forward to, it was pretty bad. Like, I would just cry being like, I miss camp and I'm so sad I can't be there. And like, the DVD was a huge outlet for me when I was there. Like, it was a way to express my love for camp and like show people how I like view it through my eyes. And so even though I couldn't be making that for camp anymore, Greg was actually the one who proposed it. He was like, why don't you make like your own SALT DVD like for yourself? Like, why don't you create something that you can look back on, whether it was for your summer or for a whole year? And that's kind of why I started making these videos at the end of every calendar year. It was just a way for me to be excited about like everyday things instead of focusing on like, I don't get to be at camp anymore. It's like, hey, but look at the beauty in your everyday life. And you can like, my videos still include a lot of my friends that I worked at camp with. Like, that's very important to me, to not just document my life with me and Greg, but also all the fun things and the times we do get to spend with our friends. Like, I'm trying to be in the moment, but I'm also trying to make sure I document those moments. And my friends will also be like, I'm so excited for your 2020 video. Like, no one's going to say that about 2020, but, last year and the year before, like, my friends and family were excited to see this because it was not only my last summer at camp, but it was a lot of my good friends' last summers as well. And so like, while they might not have been experiencing the gloom to the same degree that I was, I knew that they had to be feeling it. And so people were excited to see like a SALT DVD-esque type video out there that included them. And so that's something I get to because it's a compilation of an entire year, I constantly get to be thinking in that SALT DVD mindset of like, this is so beautiful and this moment is so special to all of us, and so I'm going to capture it so that we can look back at it at the end of this year. And so I still make little videos here and there of just other everyday things, but that's like my big project that I work on all the time. So at the end of this year, it'll be my third one that I've made, maybe. Yeah. And I feel like I've seen that in you. Maybe I didn't necessarily connect it till you made this comment that you felt the same way of like, summer's over, now what? Like, we're dramatic, but seriously, it's like, now what do I do with my life? I have no purpose or direction. And so I see you jumping into all these things, which is super cool because I know I've been in that position of like, what do I create? And so to know that like you are finding other outlets to do in the meantime is pretty cool.
I'm seeing it now that I have things to put that into, that we are a specific, I think, tool in God's toolbox of this person has a burning passion to make stuff that other people can look back on and be amazed. Or the way I put this on DVD, I kind of did a little speech beforehand, a little self-indulgent monologue, and the purpose that we kind of penned on this alt DVD would be to show people what they already are, but don't realize they are. And it's that vision and that ability to just see that in everyday life and then make it, where I think what I started to realize, and what you probably realized too, is, wait a minute, no, most people don't feel this like I do.
No.
Like, most people don't think, I'm gonna make this a movie and work on it all the time.
Right.
And bring a camera with me everywhere I do something fun.
Yep.
But there's a reason that nobody feels that way, but you feel that way. And I also think that a lot of people that everybody has something like that, where I was just talking to my friend Luke about, and found out that he wants to write children's books.
That's so cool.
But he didn't feel like he could do it. And I think that for a lot of people, realizing that, wait a minute, nobody else wants to do this, it's just my little desire, like, yeah.
Just you, and that's
have
okay.
Unique desires, yes. So Luke, if you're listening, yes, you should make the children's book. Devin says
Do
so.
Do it, Luke.
And I'm excited to see the 2020 video, even if it involves some unconventional.
It'll just be videos at home, because that's all
So you and
the
Greg.
only place we can go.
Lots of Greg chilling.
Yep.
I bet it's fun being Greg, having you always wanting to capture things, and it seems like he's very accommodating with that. So
He is. He's excited when the video comes out, and I have to remind him when I'm like, hey, can you take a video of this moment? He'll be like, why? And then I'm like, remember that video that you really like? That doesn't happen unless we document these moments. He's learning to deal with my constant recording of everyday moments. Like,
yeah, but it really is remarkable. I'm so glad we had this conversation, because it's remarkable how similar our creative journeys with, like, as far as they're tied to camp are. And I know I've been wanting to listen to your story like this whole time, and I haven't shared all the ways that they're similar, but man, there's a ton of similarities, and it's just encouraging to hear the perspective of another person who has the same type of, like, passion for those things, because it's the nature of the beast that you're not gonna have 5 friends who feel the exact same way about capturing things.
yeah.
So, Devin, it's been a pleasure. I think we'll wrap it up here, but thank you for sharing your camp story. You talked about your creative process when you were young, the things that excited you, and how you brought those things to camp and continue to bring it into your life now and in the future, and it's super inspiring to me. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I will never pass up on an opportunity to talk about things I'm passionate about. I could talk about camp and the DVDs all day long. Maybe I can convince Greg to watch one tonight. We'll see. But it was really nice to be able to come on here and just talk with somebody who understands the crazy and understands kind of where I'm coming from. It's been wonderful. I really appreciate you asking me to be on it. It's such an honor. I was very flattered, so thank you.
This is the start. Hi, Devin. Welcome. Welcome to the backyard barbecue. That's how to start.
Start over.
Welcome. Okay. 3, 2, 1.